Lucky cat. Since I started running this show-style coffee shop, I have been busy preparing various teas, cakes and snacks every day to welcome customers coming and going. The decoration of the store is full of retro charm. When you push open the wooden sliding door, the first thing that comes into view is a room full of nostalgic atmosphere. The lighting in the store is dim and soft, and the walls are covered with yellowed retro posters, some of which are movie posters from the Showa era, and some are early Japanese advertisements, such as Mitsuya Soda, Kirin Beer, Morinaga Milk Candy, etc. It exudes a feeling of stepping back in time, as if you have walked into an old tea house from the Showa era. It is decorated with many small ornaments that I found from second-hand antique shops, adding to the nostalgic atmosphere. One day on vacation, I came to a second-hand antique shop hidden deep in an alley. The store looks old from the outside, and inside it are various objects from different eras. The smell is a mixture of old wood and a slight hint of dust. As I was looking around, a worn and paint-chipped lucky cat caught my attention. It just so happened that the store was short. "How much is this lucky cat?" I asked the shop owner. The boss looked up at me and said calmly, "This thing has been on display for a long time. I'll give you a discount." I didn't think much about it and thought it matched the style of the store, so I bought it. Back in the store, I placed the lucky cat next to the cash register, hoping it would bring good luck. The strange thing is that my tabby cat, Sai, is particularly interested in it. He would run over and rub against it from time to time, and even make low humming sounds, as if he was talking to it. Ever since the day the lucky cat was brought back, some unusual things have happened in the store. That night, I closed the shop and tidied the bar as usual, and began preparing ingredients for the next day. I concentrated on pouring the fresh cream into the mixing bowl, adding sugar and vanilla extract, and preparing to make the store's signature Showa-style cream puffs. Just then, a clear cat's meow came from the other side of the bar. I thought it was Sai acting coquettishly, but when I turned around, I found it squatting next to the coffee machine, its eyes wide open, staring straight at the cashier counter. When I finished and was about to close the shop, Sai was curled up at the bar licking his paws, looking lazy. I usually make one last inspection before closing the store, checking the position of every table, chair and decoration to make sure everything is in order. Pa! A crisp sound broke the silence. I turned around suddenly and found that the Showa-era music box on the display stand had fallen to the ground with the lid still open. The carousel inside turned slowly and then stopped. I frowned and was about to go over to pick it up when suddenly, Sai meowed, jumped gracefully from the bar, stretched, and swung its tail in the air. "Hey, Sai, were you jumping around on the shelf just now?" I glared at it, picked up the music box and checked it. Fortunately, it was not damaged. Sai shook his ears, not taking my accusations seriously at all. He turned around and jumped to the cashier counter, rubbed his hands against the newly bought lucky cat for a few seconds, then stretched out his paw and patted it gently on the head. I sighed and shook my head. This guy, the direction of the lucky cat is different from before. It is now facing the store entrance. Carter. There was another strange noise. This time, it was the Dauma tumbler placed by the window. It was supposed to be standing obediently on the display cabinet, but now it rolled to the floor and shook a few times before it stopped. I turned around and saw Sai standing in front of the cabinet, tilting his head to look at the fallen Dauma, with his tail flicking gently, as if to say, "Huh? I didn't do this, did I? Did you just touch it?" Sai blinked, yawned, and licked his paws as if nothing had happened, completely ignoring me. I sighed helplessly, picked up Damo, and put him back in his place. At this time, I thought to myself it should be just Sai being naughty, right? However, when I came to my senses, I caught a glimpse of the lucky cat next to the cash register. Its direction changed again. This time, it was facing the window. It was pitch black outside the window, and it seemed like something was standing there, looking at me quietly. I frowned, feeling a little scared. This sound.is not Sai's at all. I comforted myself that it might be the cry of a stray cat outside, and continued with the work at hand. But over the next few days, strange things happened more and more frequently. One morning, when I was about to open the shop, I found that the direction of the lucky cat had changed. It was originally facing the store entrance, but this time it turned to the inside of the bar, as if staring at something. At that time, I just thought that I accidentally touched it when I was tidying up the day before, so I didn't think much about it and turned it back to its original place. But the weird thing was, this went on for a few days, and every morning when I came into the store, it would turn itself in a different direction. Sightsee's behavior became more and more strange. He would always stare at the cash register in the middle of the night, with his fur standing up, and sometimes even let out a low roar. This started to make me feel uneasy. Late one night, I decided to go to the store to pick up some food because I was running low on ingredients. When I opened the door, a strange feeling came over me. The store was dead silent, but there seemed to be a strange smell in the air. Just then, I heard a slight click sound, like something gently falling to the ground. I walked towards the cashier counter vigilantly and found that my heart skipped a beat. I remember that window very clearly. It was clearly locked when we closed the shop. I held my breath and slowly walked to the window. Just as I was about to close it, a black shadow suddenly flashed past the window. Then, Sightsee in the store suddenly stood up and screamed loudly, "Meow," towards the window. I was so scared that I took a step back and almost dropped the phone in my hand. Then I realized there was a thief. I was so frightened that I quickly called the police. When the police arrived, they found some footprints outside the window. It seemed that someone had indeed tried to sneak into the store through the window. And when I checked the monitor and heard the sound on the screen, it gave me even more chills. It was 3 o'clock in the morning and the city was silent. The street lamps cast a faint light on the outer wall of my show-style coffee shop. At this time, a figure quietly approached the store door. He was wearing a black hat and mask, dressed in black, and his footsteps were light and silent. He was obviously an experienced thief. He first took out a small tool and tried to pry open the door lock, but he didn't expect that the lock would be more difficult to open than he expected. He cursed inwardly and turned his gaze to the window inside the store, the small window facing the bar, which happened to be unlocked. "Oh, let's go this way," he thought to himself, with the corners of his mouth slightly raised. He began to dismantle the protective net of the window, and then flexibly crawled in. However, as soon as he stepped into the store, he felt a strange chill. There was no light on in the coffee shop, but the residual light from the street lamps was enough to barely make out the exhibits. The shop was dead silent, and the air was damp and cold, not like a summer night. He held his breath, looked around to make sure there was no one around, and then walked towards the cashier with confidence. "Take the money first and end this quickly." He approached the cash register and reached for the drawer, when "Pa!" Something suddenly fell from the shelf behind me, and the crisp sound was particularly harsh in the silence. He turned his head suddenly and saw an overturned Dauma doll lying on the ground, shaking continuously, as if someone had just pushed it. "Shit, isn't this decoration placed too far out in the corner?" he muttered to himself, and without thinking much, he turned back. The old lucky cat was originally facing the inside of the store, but now it turned slightly towards the window. He frowned and thought, "Didn't I just?" But he didn't have time to think about it, so he took the money first. He quickly opened the cash register, and was about to reach out. Meow. A cat's meow sounded in his ears. He shuddered and looked back sharply toward the bar, but there was nothing there. "Damn, there's a cat in this store." His heart beat faster, cold sweat broke out on his forehead, and his eyes quickly scanned the surroundings, looking for the source of the sound. Just then, he caught a glimpse of a faint white mist floating on the floor of the store. The white mist was thin and agile, like a vague shadow, floating in the dim light, and gradually condensed into the shape of a cat, a slender tail, high-raised ears, and the outline was as clear as a real cat squatting there. What the hell? He widened his eyes and took a step back unconsciously. His heel accidentally hit the leg of a chair, making a creaking sound. The ball of white mist moved slowly, as if looking directly at him, and then suddenly pounced towards him. Ah! He fell back to the ground in horror, waving his hands around, trying to drive away the strange shadow, but his palms could not touch anything. The white mist instantly penetrated his body, as if it had drilled into his chest. He suddenly felt chest tightness, shortness. After this incident, I always felt that this lucky cat was not simple. So I took it back to the antique shop and wanted to ask the owner about the origin of this cat. "After you bought this thing, did anything happen?" The boss tone was tentative. I told him the truth, and he was silent for a moment before saying, "This lucky cat used to be the mascot of an old tea house. The hostess of the tea house kept a white cat, and it was said that the cat was very spiritual and would protect the shop. Once, the shop was broken into by thieves, and the hostess was unfortunately killed. The cat desperately attacked the thief and finally fell next to the cash register. My heart was shocked when I heard it, and I seemed to understand something. Later, someone made this lucky cat, saying that the cat's spirit would continue to protect the store." The boss paused and said with some regret, "It's rare that it can still play a role after so many years." Back in the store, I looked at the lucky cat on the cash register and felt grateful. Perhaps it is really guarding this shop silently, just like it guarded the owner of the old tea house back then. Since then, I still keep the lucky cat in its original place, and even whisper "good morning" to it when I open the store every day. Sightseye no longer seemed to be afraid of it. Instead, he often lay beside it and dozed off with a look of contentment on his face. Perhaps this is truly a fate of protection that transcends time.